Hey there, Chris. Do you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well. It's nice to meet you.
Hey, nice to meet you too.
I got to tell you, Chris, I didn't know that much about you before today, and I've spent some time researching, and I have so much respect for you. Oh, now I can't hear you. It cut off for a second.
Now you're good?
Oh, I hear you. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, to introduce to our audience, what really struck me about you, Chris, is you are one of the few bodybuilding coaches that does not subscribe to dogma. You don't give us a flat out answer for everything. You know, a lot of clients would like to hear black and white answers, like always use this or always do that. And I noticed that you don't do that. You're one of the few people that doesn't.
Well, you know how it is. It's like when people don't understand something, they want to attach to a simple concept, right?
Yeah.
And the more knowledge you know about a particular subject, the more you realize you can't give any straight answer on something because it's so circumstantial. But that's like that with anything. You know, the more you know, the more you realize you can't give a definite answer. The least you know, the little you know, the more you can give a black and white answer. And that's one of the things I can't stand when people give so many absolutes, because as you know, in bodybuilding and the body and nutrition, we know very little about it still, given, you know, the amount of research we have this far, but you just don't know. And you got to let people educate people and let them decide. But yeah, there is no black and white. There's no absolutes. I can't stand that stuff.
But for the audience to realize, just as I've noticed this since I've had my channel, when somebody doesn't give black and white absolutes, it's actually not good for your business. Like, clients don't really like that generally. So you've chosen to be honest and, you know, to be realistic and also to admit what you do. I heard you mentioning how little we know about the microbiome. You're the first person that I've heard mention this other than me, because so many people like to talk about, there are even books published about the microbiome. We know so little about how it works. It was a breath of fresh air to hear that as well.
You know, it's funny. I have like 25 continuing education credits I have to get done by May. And I actually did a couple today, and one of them was on the microbiome. It was updated research with probiotics and microbiome, what we know, what we don't know, and just kind of the general information. But just like in the whole seminar, there was no absolutes. You know, it was like, hey, this is the research. This is what the research is stating. In theory, this was what might be working, but it's so individual, we don't know. You know what I mean?
Very much so. Well, before we get started, by the way, Boston's about to join, but before we get started, just some housekeeping. I wanted to remind the audience to sign up to Boston's forum. It's a wonderful forum. People send me messages asking things that should be answered on that forum. If you guys watch the show, support Boston. You know, it's a good thing to do. Anyway, Chris, I'm very excited to have you here. Boston will join soon, but I think he knows a little bit more background about you than I do. So I wanted to ask you, one thing I didn't figure out is, where are you from?
From Connecticut. I actually just moved to Texas about 3 days ago.
Oh, no way. Where did you move in Texas?
Fort Worth.
We were thinking of moving to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My wife and I have been we live in California, which is hell, obviously. So we've been, California is what I call it, but we've been trying to get out of here. But the thing about Texas, I'm choosing between Texas and Colorado. I'm originally from Colorado, which has a beautiful, you know, Rocky Mountains side, things to do outside, hiking. Texas has all the liberty and real Americanism, but it's just flat land, desert land. And I'm not sure if I can tolerate it, being that I lived in Dubai for so long. It was so hot there.
Yeah, it is a lot like that. But I can tell you more on the Fort Worth side, like the more you go northwestern side of Texas, you definitely have more rolling hills, fields, trees. You know, you go in other parts of Texas, like the east, southern side of Texas, and it kind of feels more Arizona-ish, you know, more desert, like more, you know, desert feel. But, you know, I like Texas, like you said, the liberties, it's so much lower in taxes. It's beautiful. Everything's so clean. Like, it's like, I was telling her, we're driving around. I'm like, I don't see a shred of garbage anywhere. Like in Fort Worth, it's like everything looks brand new and well done and well kept. People are friendly. Chicken's cheaper. Everything's cheaper, you know? Yeah. So I'm like, man, this is kind of why we came here. Connecticut's very, very, very high taxes and expensive.
I've heard, yes, very expensive place to live in. Also, Connecticut's a little dangerous in some places, right?
Oh, crime's rising significantly since they changed a few laws in Connecticut where police cannot chase suspects in cars anymore. And
wow, that's very advantageous for criminals.
Yeah.
You just drive away?
Yeah, if they drive away fast, you can't chase them. And kids under the age of 18, if they steal cars, they just get instantaneously released. They don't get prosecuted. So now you have younger kids stealing cars in wealthy neighborhoods and getting arrested over and over and over again.
We actually have that in LA. In LA, there's a rule, it's a prop something from a few years ago. If you get caught with less than an ounce of meth, it's a misdemeanor and there's overcrowding in the jail. So they literally just release you. So so drug dealers would just carry less than an ounce. They go in and then right back out the same day. It's pretty hectic. It's really but I've heard Austin, I've been following Joe Rogan. I hear in Austin, it's turning a little bit like LA with the homelessness.
Yeah. Oh, Austin was bad when I went, and this was almost 5 years ago. I was with a road trip for Universal. I saw 2 people overdose on the road when I was there, and I was only there for 2 hours.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're sponsored by Animal, aren't you?
Correct.
Oh, I love that. I used to have their advertisements on my wall when I was a kid with the Canadian guy with the big forearms. I forgot his name.
Yeah. McGrath.
McGrath. Yeah. That was excellent. Because I was into grip and stuff, and that guy has just the biggest forearms on earth. I don't know how he got those incredible arms. Incredible.
Genetics and weights.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting about him is that he's tall. I think he has long arms. I'm not sure. It's very unusual to see a guy with those forearms long.
I agree. Same thing with having a guy who's tall with big calves.
Yeah, like Kuklo, which I just noticed. He has big calves. Yeah, very interesting.
Huge calves.
So I guess Boston's a little late for some reason, but I wanted to get into your background. I've been trying to listen to some interviews, and you have a very interesting background, getting into motocross at a young age. I know nothing about motocross, but I heard you describe the amount of bones you've broken. How did you get into that sport, and why did you tolerate all those bones breaking for so long? Is it like an adrenaline rush?
I don't know. I just know. I remember being a kid, and team sports weren't really exciting to me. They're just kind of like whatever. And I remember watching that movie, The Dirt Bike Kid, when I was a little boy. And my mom used to buy me little toy dirt bikes, and I always played with them. And I used to ask my mom for a dirt bike, and she's like, "They don't make dirt bikes for kids. They don't do that." And one day I'm at CVS with my mom, and I crack open a Dirt Rider magazine, and I see these little kids racing. And I flip the magazine over. I'm like, they do make bikes for the kids. And then I hammered her for years on it. And finally my parents were like, dude, he's never going to give up on this thing. My dad's like, well, let's get him a dirt bike at age 5. And then that's how it started. And I loved it. And I rode it every single day after school, and then eventually raced, and then got the whole, full bore into it, where it was a family thing. My dad and I'd go racing every single weekend through the whole season, every single year. We'd go to Georgia to race and practice. I had a trainer, and we took it very seriously. Broke a lot of bones, but it was probably arguably the most fun time of my life. That's for sure.
You said that the motocross riders usually peak in there by like 21 or 20. Is that
true? Your body just can't take that abuse. Falling and crashing that hard at age 30, you just don't fall the same way, and you don't heal the same way. Even when I was 22, I stopped racing when I was between 21 and 22, and even breaking ribs and falling, then I started to you start to second guess it. When you're young, you get hurt, you're like, oh, I'll just do it again. And you get older, you're like, that really hurt. I don't know if I want to do that again. And then you start thinking twice. And then when you start thinking twice, you can just forget it.
This happened to me like a couple of years ago. I tried to join a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu stuff. And at the time I was a bit muscular. So falling and you can hurt yourself really quickly. I did 2 sessions and I was like, you know what? I'm past the age of 30. This is ridiculous. I missed my chance, to be honest with you. Especially when I was muscular, it's way worse. They put you with the big guy and I didn't know what I was doing. So I kept getting hurt. But can I ask you something? I've been talking to Mike Dolce, who comes on my podcast every so often, because I just had a baby daughter. And I was thinking about in the future, getting my kids into, combat sports early so they can protect themselves. And he was warning me, the earlier you put them in, the more likelihood they get injuries early and they have a shorter career. Is it the same in motocross? Like you start later,
No, and they tell you in motocross, if you're not really good by the time you're like 17, you don't have a career. So most of those kids, like Ricky Carmichael, James Stewart, Travis Pastrana, I know you know some of those names, like those guys started when they were like just about walking, and they've been riding their entire life, broken multiple bones and injuries, but they kept at it. I mean, could you potentially have the ability to get more injured? Yeah, but I mean, think about how much faster a youngster learns and picks something up than an adult.
That's what I was thinking. I was arguing with Dolce, but I guess in maybe in combat sports it's a bit different. Boston, did you know that he was a motocross rider, a serious one?
I had no idea. No, I did not.
Yeah, I've been researching it, man. It's very interesting. How did you end up then when you left motocross? How did you decide to go into? Did you go to bodybuilding before you went to study nutrition, or was it simultaneous?
Okay, so it was actually this is what happened. So when my parents, like I started getting into racing, I got really serious, and my parents had a discussion like, well, Chris looks like he's really taking this seriously. Should we help him get to the next level and maybe look for a trainer who trains kids who race motocross? And my parents got this crazy guy who's nuts. And he made me lift weights, kind of almost like you could say in a CrossFit style fashion, very high intense, high repetition, but it was like overhead press, deadlift, clean and jerk, rows, core work. And my body changed quickly. And I remember looking at my body and being like, oh, wow, this is weird. I have like these muscles. And I was like in 6th grade, 7th grade, and other kids pointed it out. They're like, look, Tuttle's got abs. It's like 6th grade. Oh, wow. So I'm like, oh, I didn't know that weight training made your body change that way. So then I started to like pick up bodybuilding magazines, and my trainer would rip them out of my hands and be like, you can't be a bodybuilder and race motocross. That's like trying to run a marathon and be a sumo wrestler at the same time. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't work. Adding weight to your car if you're a racer like that. Yeah, like I wanted to. He goes, you got to be able to maintain your max heart rate for 20 minutes. You got to be able to be light on the bike. You can't be heavy. But I always wanted to bodybuild, so it was always fighting me. And I would always try to sneak in like bicep curls and other exercises when he wasn't paying attention. And then as soon as I was finished motocross, I went right into bodybuilding immediately because I always wanted to do it.
At what age was that?
21. So I turned pro in 21. I did like 2 pro races. And then I'm like, you know what? I want to bodybuild now. That's all I want to do. And I sold all my stuff and I started bodybuilding full bore a week later.
Well, I have to offer an apology for using an old picture of you, by the way, on the, I noticed, I didn't mean to, I was an accident. I didn't, I'm so sorry about that. But so how did your, I know more about your coaching. How did your competition history go? Well, do you still compete?
No, I'm done competing. So my first show was in 2005. I had somebody help my prep. I was like 174 with soggy glutes on stage, got dead last. And then I picked up Chris Aceto's books, read all his books, and I did my own prep.
Wait, he has a book?
Yeah, he's got these like championship bodybuilding books, very simple eighth grade reading level stuff. Read those books, did my own prep, and then I ended up putting on like 14 pounds of stage weight with better condition, not great condition, better condition. And then I won the novice overall and second in the open. And then the week after I got second in the open again. And then 4th show got crushed. And then I hired Fakhri just because I'm like, man, like I'm going through this whole entire year and I think I know what I'm doing and I'm learning, but I'm not progressing as fast as I want to go. And I want to hire somebody who's already had 10 years of experience. So I don't need to make 10 years of mistakes. Mm-hmm. So I asked him to help me. And at the point in that time, back in 2006, 2007, people weren't even really coaching much. And he said, no, he goes, I don't do that. And then one day he reached out and he's like, you know what, maybe I will help you. This is what I'll charge. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to do? And then I just followed it. And then in 6 months, I went from maybe 4 weeks out condition on stage at 192 to ripped at 204. And I won Atlantic States heavyweight. And that's kind of how everything started.
What year did you become a dietitian?
2011, I got my license. So I passed the exam in 2011.
So was this before you became a dietitian?
That is correct. Correct. Okay. I was all doing school during that time.
Yeah, because you did an undergrad and a master's, right? And then passed the dietitian. But wait, about Fakhri before we leave this, because we've had Fakhri on the show before. I really like him. He has a very unique, he actually has the opposing view of using oil to Bostin. Bostin uses these deep injections in his arms. Fakhri, I think, invented a different way, which is really useful, which he does like small injections around the muscles that are not as deep. Did he ever get you on board on this? No. Did he mention it to you?
No. You know what's really funny about that is like, I remember when I worked at Fakhri and during nationals, I remember people being like, oh, Fakhri's got me taking so much crap. And I'm like, he really didn't have me taking that much crap. And I would like compare cycles and he's like, oh, my cycle's way heavier than that. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. But no, never, nothing out of control. And
I mean, honestly, I'm talking about local injections into the muscle, not the amount of gear. Oh, you never tried that?
No.
Oh, he has.
I didn't even know he did that either. That sounds really time consuming. I know Jeff Long did that when John O'Regan advised and he got all lumpy, but that's crazy. But Chris, Fak is actually known for being one of the heavier drug guys.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's why I was always surprised because backstage, everybody starts talking, you know what I mean? Like, yo, he's got me doing 800 mgs a tren. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
That's not mine. Yeah.
Bostin, you know Nick Trigili's type of injection thing that he did videos about?
Yeah,
that's from Fakhri. That's completely stolen from Fakhri.
About all those times he had all those syringes laying around just shooting himself. That's crazy.
Yeah, but so at some point you got coached by Chris, right?
Yeah. So I'll just tell you guys everything. It doesn't matter at this point in time. So, you know, I did junior nationals. I was a heavyweight, didn't come in good condition. Got flu 2 weeks out. It was just a disaster. And then after that, I decided to stop bodybuilding, focus on my career, finish my school, just lifted 3 days a week, finished all my school and everything. I got out of school, got on my internship, studying for my exam. I'm like, man, I haven't done anything competitive in a while. Like, I think I might jump into a strongman show. So one of my good friends is a professional strongman, and he helped me get ready for a strongman meet. And I won my class in a strongman division. And then I got ready for Jay Cutler in like 11 weeks, jumped into that, did my own prep, won that one. And then I went to go hire Fak, and I'm like, hey man, I want to get going. I want to do, nationals. And he's like, all right, yeah, okay. Helps me with nationals. Everything works out great. I get fifth at North Americans. And then I won my class at nationals in November. So I take some time off, and then I contact him to be like, hey, I want to get ready for my pro show. And he didn't return my call, didn't return my email. And I'm like, hey man, I really want to get going on this. And then it's like, all right, well, next week. And next week comes, never heard from him. And I'm like, what? I can't deal with this. I don't know what's going on. So I contacted Evan and Jose. I'm like, hey, you guys know Aceto. Like, can you guys put in a good word? Maybe I can hook up with them. And he's like, all right, well, we talk to them. So they talked to Chris for me, and I contacted Chris, and Chris is like, sure. And then that's when I hooked up with him, and that was a totally different experience what I'm never used to.
How so? What's his coaching style like? I've never talked to someone who he coached. I really have great respect for him, by the way. Yeah. But.
All right. So Fakhri was like, it's like, all right, what are you eating now? What are you using? Okay, this I'm using. Sends me a diet, probably a template that he modifies, and cycle projection. Where Aceto was like, all right, what are you following? What are you taking? I send it to him, and he sends it right back to me exactly the same.
Just
and then he goes, okay, check in next Friday. Let's see where we're at. And then next Friday comes, and then he makes just a small change. And then, all right, great, look good. Next time, small change. Very lackadaisy, but all these small incremental changes did have results. It worked. It did. And then the amount of gear was just like, didn't even make sense. I remember one time
so tiny, right? It was tiny.
No, okay. I thought this was a joke. I had to contact Jose and ask him. So I'm like, I go, Jose, is he serious? He told me to take, I was on 500 mgs a test, and he goes, I want you to take 100 milligrams of Deca. And I asked him, I go, every other day? And he goes, no, just on Monday. I go 100 milligrams? He's like, yeah, just on Monday. That's it. And I'm like, okay. So I sent him pictures on Friday, and he's like, perfect. You're up 2 pounds. You look fuller. Great. Leave it alone. And I'm like, is he fucking with me? Is he serious?
Yeah, I heard his gear doses are insane, and I heard he does like weird shit. Like, I know a guy that worked with him, and like randomly, like 4 weeks out, he was like adding 200 mgs of EQ, or like just crazy.
100%. I remember, I think it was New York Pro. I was like, hey, we're gonna throw in orals at the end or anything like that. Do we need any of that? He's like, oh, what do you got? 4 weeks out. But I mean, I like working with him. It was very stress-free. Communication was great. I didn't really have any issues. I probably put one of the least amount of efforts into a prep I ever had for New York Pro. Like my body just responded pretty well, besides the ulcerative colitis at the end, but like that was kind of out of both of our control. And then after Aceto, I worked with Andrew Vu, which was awesome.
Except for the peak, right?
Yeah, I think what really happened is like my body falls apart when I have to like lose 10 pounds of water and try to bring the water back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like when I was 222 the night before, 24 hours before, full of water and felt good, I looked fine. And then as soon as you cut all the way down to 212, and I just lose it. Everything falls apart.
when you weren't in that first call out at that California Pro Show, I was shocked.
Yeah, well, dude, you know how it goes. Yeah. You try to plan, you try to do the best you can, but sometimes your body has other plans.
I don't know Andrew. Where is he based? Which
Texas.
team?
He's in Texas.
Okay, I've heard his name, but you glimpsed over a couple of really interesting things. The first one is, how in the world did you get into a strongman competition randomly? I mean, I used to do powerlifting and arm wrestling, but strongman scared the hell out of me. I didn't know, especially because I'm not. Are you tall?
No, 5'9". So remember, in strongman amateur, there's weight classes. There's 3.
Okay.
It was like below 200, 200 to 230, I think 230 and above. And I searched for a strongman show that had events that was for repetitions, not for max lifts. So it's like, I will do max lifts. So I did a 400-pound axle wheel for like 32 reps in 60 seconds. Like, I can do stuff like that, but I can't deadlift 700 pounds. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, when it comes to a little bit of athleticism with repetition and weight, I can do, but other than that, no go.
You're very adventurous, though. That thing is, they're so injury prone. But you come from Motocross, so I guess you have a different perspective. The other thing you talked about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
My body's destroyed now. That's why I'm not doing anything anymore.
Yeah, we all. Are you in your 30s too?
38.
Oh yeah, we're all feeling that too. Except Bostin, you don't have injuries, do you?
Well,
Except the pec tear.
I had the pec tear, yeah, but
yeah, but you don't have any joint things, right?
I only trained heavy for a couple of years, and then I don't know, my body got weak, and maybe I don't know. So I'm really pretty good on the joints.
Wait, the other thing you glimpsed over was the ulcerative colitis. So you have colitis?
Oh, yeah. I had it. I actually had a recent colonoscopy 3 months ago, and there was no evidence of any sort of irritable bowel disease at all. So whatever manifested at the time has completely healed. Wow. One of the things with IBD is there's really 2 forms, where it's genetic and predisposed, where somebody gets the disease and it progresses over a lifetime or stays in remission. And the other individual where it manifests, shows symptoms, and eventually it'll go away, never come back. Mm-hmm. I just changed my lifestyle, changed my diet, because everything the doctors are telling me didn't work. And then eventually it went away. I mean, there's still things I can't do, like if I'm awake for like a day, say I'm traveling and I'm stressed out and I'm drinking a bunch of coffee, eating bullshit food, I'll get signs right away.
Yeah, me too.
So like
I have Crohn's disease.
Oh, so you know all about it.
And I guess we're maybe some of the only. Did you never take the tumor necrosis factor alpha blockers or any of those hardcore cancer promoting medications that they?
No, they gave me a bunch of NSAID suppositories. But I said to them, like, look, this is not working. They're like, well, research supports diet doesn't change it. I'm like, dude, this is bullshit.
That is bullshit.
So, yeah.
Thank
so
God
I went and I figured it out myself,
Well, I guess we both did. I had like a crippling. My case was so bad I couldn't. For 8 months, I couldn't work. I was in excruciating pain. I needed a surgery for a fistula. You know what fistulas are?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a fistula, but other than that, mine completely healed. I don't even know which part of my lifestyle did it, but I just revolutionized my lifestyle and my diet and did time restricted eating and was careful with my foods. And I like you, I'll get a symptom if I do something wrong, but otherwise I don't suffer with it at all. And for the audience to know, these diseases can be cripplingly painful. Like really, really painful. No.
I laugh when people complain in prep. When I was getting ready for North Americans, I had the prep fatigue on top of shitting blood and mucus 10 to 14 times a day. And the fatigue that came with that was unbelievable. Like, I went through preps, felt fatigue before. And then I remember one time when it started to happen, I said to my buddy, I'm like, I'm fatigued, but like I'm dying fatigued. Like, this is something wrong fatigued. Like, this isn't normal. And then I remember it happening and me being crippling fatigued, and eventually figure out what was going on. But like, holy moly, there'll be times in the day where I'm okay. And then times of the day are like, I can hardly like stand up, Yeah.
My case,
glad that's over with.
Yeah, the worst thing is sometimes the irritation will move closer to the rectum, in which case in Crohn's disease, it's not so isolated to the colon. So you end up not being able to sit or lay down, and then I can't write. I used to write a lot of stuff. I couldn't write. I mean, it's horrible. Anyway, not to get too much into that. So tell us about, what's unusual is I don't think there's many bodybuilding coaches that are actual dietitians and trained in nutrition. There are very few, aren't there?
Yeah, I know John Jewett is. He's a very good one. Other than him and me, but we both, it's funny. It's like, they do say that school sometimes puts people in a box, right? Where you can't think outside the box. This is how it is because this is what the research states, but we kind of have a background in both. We started bodybuilding first. We went through school. My father's a physician. My father, and I could be biased, but my father's a very good physician. He's not one of those people that's going to give you a judgment call on something he doesn't know about. He will simply say, that's probably not a good idea, but I can't say much enough to comment on it. That's the type of person my father is. If he doesn't know, he's going to say he doesn't know, not make up some crap about whatever drug or state that is occurring. So I have that ability to think outside the box. So like being in bodybuilding and, doing what we do, obviously a lot of it is experimental and we understand the risks, but I've always been able to steer clear of things that are too risky or what I find just plain stupid. Because obviously your guys' last episode, you guys touched on a lot of things that are just completely stupid.
I'd love to get your opinion on that after. Yeah.
Oh boy, I got a lot.
That's actually my next question. I was going to ask you about it. But I forgot to mention about your father being a physician. Actually, that's a good question. How does that influence? I mean, when I grew up as a kid, my father doesn't know much about science. So I feel like the reason I never studied science in undergrad was because I didn't know anything about it. Like I didn't know anything about biology or physics or chemistry. What's it like growing up with a physician? Does it change the way you look at the world?
100%. Like this, my dad went to Harvard. My dad's a pretty smart guy.
Wow.
So I used to always joke, be like, Dad, what happened to me? My milk baby? What's the deal?
I think you did well yourself.
But my dad has a very good introspect and a good way of thinking outside the box and kind of understanding things. In other words, he's very good at applying what he learned in medical school versus becoming just book smart, right? So having him as a dad and always asking questions, he always had some type of answer, or he would find out the answer. Dad, why does this happen? Well, and you go into all this explanation and explain it. Because think about it, when you're a family physician, you're trying to explain to somebody who doesn't understand anything about medicine about their disease state and how to treat it. Yeah. So his ability to explain to me how things work, it was easy to explain something from his intellect to me being a child. Do you know what I mean? And putting it in those uneasy to understand terms.
I always got the answer, I don't know. That was it.
Yeah.
and when we grew up, there was no Wikipedia. You had to get like Encyclopedia Britannica, which was 10 volumes, which I didn't know.
Yes.
So I couldn't do anything about it. That's pretty funny. Okay, so I was going to ask you about peak week because after the discussion with Shelby Starnes, I'm very curious how people approach peak week. I mean, not the discussion with him. I did talk to him, but the discussion about him. First of all, what did you think of? Did you hear that podcast? Did you hear about that?
Oh, yeah.
What
absolutely.
did you think of that? What's your impression of why do people do that? Is it a necessary thing? What's your thoughts as a coach?
Honestly,
I know nothing about dehydration.
It's so asinine that I don't know how anybody can have the thought process of trying to dry somebody out a week or longer in advance. Like it doesn't require more than even a day to dry somebody out. You can do small manipulations as in reduce carbohydrates, keep water steady, proper sleep, drop a few compounds that hold water. You don't need to dehydrate them through a means of a diuretic that far out. That's just, I don't even understand and comprehend someone's thought process behind that, let alone the risk of something happening to the individual who's depleted nutrients, training hard every day, pushing their body to the max, and then you're giving them drugs that are going to make their body excrete potassium and sodium. Loss of words, and even bigger loss of words to people defending that.
They are, by the way, there are people commenting on Instagram.
His client, only a few of his clients. I mean, 99% of people are obviously are on our side, but there's a small percentage of his clients that are minions, of course, that are going to be defend him. Yeah.
You know what's fun? What's funny is there are some people commenting on the YouTube video saying like, what about the responsibility of the woman who did this? And even though the women we interviewed said that they're responsible for it and so on, it's a lot to expect on an athlete to know about kidney function and heart, like how the heart could get damaged from having an elevated heart rate. I mean, they might study the drug, but how are they going to study the physiology of our body? They don't have time for that.
It's simple. To debunk anybody who says that, it's simple. When you pay somebody for a professional service, you're paying them because they're supposed to be an expert and a professional in the endeavor you're hiring them for, because you don't have the knowledge. So you're paying them to provide you that. Exactly. It's not, I'm going to walk down the street, ask Joe Blow on the side of the street selling drugs, hey, how much acid do I take to go see freaking clowns run around? That's not what this is. In any other walk in life, plumbing, electrician, doctor, contractor, guys coming in to put tile in your house, If they mess up, it's their fault. I don't get where we lose self-responsibility in everything in our entire life, except when it comes to bodybuilding and paying a coach to direct us to win, because so we can do better and look better, not die or end up in the hospital. I can't believe that. And if you have to do those extreme measures to get somebody in shape, then you probably have too many clients on board and you're just using pharmaceuticals to make up for lack of attention with nutrition and training. That's probably it.
About that. Okay.
Yeah. It's like, I don't get it. Put like this, if every coach was doing something similar, you can make a different argument. But there are coaches that don't use any diuretics. John Jewett doesn't even use any diuretics. The dude's dry as a bone. So it's possible. Natural bodybuilders, WWF, who are natural.
Those guys are shredded peeled. It's like, wait, you need DNP, T3, Clen, 700 calories a day and 2 hours of cardio and diuretics for 3 months or a month, whatever it is, to get somebody dry? You shouldn't be coaching, or you shouldn't have 400 clients.
Incredible.
And Leo, I did get that confirmed that he was on Pro Muscle years and years ago, and he was learning from people on Pro Muscle. So he's a guy that's got a lot of his information from forums.
Yeah, apparently he was. I was actually on Professional Muscle in like 2003, a really long time ago. I was a kid. I shouldn't have been there. But apparently what we hear, Chris, is that he was on Professional Muscle for a while, and he was allegedly hiring the people on Professional Muscle and slowly learning information from them. And that's how he became a coach afterwards. You know what I found out that's interesting? He's apparently friends with Bill Tocco, who is a mafia guy from Detroit. You know, I don't know if, boss, you ever seen, I have a guy called Gunner who comes on the show. He's related to the Toccos. Anyways, he's pretty interesting. So I wanted to ask you some nutrition questions before we move on. So I know that you have a business with your wife, which by the way, I find awesome. I also work with my wife, and Boston is very close to his wife. So we have some similarities. What is your business? Do you guys do diets for people, or do you have products?
No products. We do nutrition. Majority of my clientele is nutrition-related disease, weight loss. I have a lot of nutrition-related allergy. People come to me, diabetes management, which was really nutrition-related disease. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I prep people, but that's probably 20% of my clientele. It's mainly kind of nutrition like that. We've done speaking for colleges for like volleyball teams and sports nutrition, things like that. Balanced eating, eating disorders. Helping reestablish relationship with foods with people after they're done competing, because how many women are an absolute disaster after they've done competing?
Is that true? Can you comment a bit on that? I'm curious about that.
I could never tell you a percent, because obviously I'm not keeping tally, but there's a large percent of women who exit competing that they're a disaster. Their hormones are a mess, losing their hair, their relationship with foods becomes so poor. So, there's a lot of binge eating cycle. And they become, that constant yo-yo where you're exercising excessively, binge eating, exercising excessively, binge eating, following an extreme diet, etc., to try to get your body, but the body just doesn't work that way, and eventually just regresses. I mean, how many? I mean, I don't know how involved you are in the industry and see people over time. I've known so many women who start out looking really good. 4 years later, 5 years later, they're done competing, masculinated face, thinned hair, coarse voice, and their body's completely falling apart. It's just like, all for what? For what?
I ask about it, but people say that they don't mind, or that they like that, or because have you ever seen that picture of that lady with a goatee? I sent it to you, Boston, right?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, that's crazy.
There was a professional bodybuilder who ended up, unfortunately. Oh, another thing about the female bodybuilders I noticed is a lot of them seem to end up, probably through the pressures on them and stuff like that, into substance abuse later in life. Not in minority, but it seems to be more common than in men. Anyway, this lady was using meth, I guess, and she got caught, arrested. And in the arrest video picture, she has like a full-grown goatee with like very short hair. And so I was thinking, like, this is a kind of thing that you can't undo. And I wonder what emotional traumas they go through afterwards, with society judging them and so on.
Well, bodybuilding, obviously, I believe that most women who are bodybuilding, or even women's physique, know what they're getting into for the most part. But I mean, when you start to see more of that happen in figure and bikini, there's a lot of bikini girls now backstage who got some deepened voices.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you some quick questions. One is, since you're from the true nutrition world, all I know about nutrition I've just studied by myself because I'm interested in longevity. So I don't have the background that you guys have. I'm curious from your perspective what you feel about these diet wars between these vegans and carnivores that's all over YouTube. People constantly. Oh, there's also the raw meat guys. What do you think of these extremities in the diet world and the wars that they have?
Well, I do believe that they believe what they're doing is righteous and superior over another. I do believe they believe that.
Yeah.
But time over time has shown that a balanced diet is the way to live. If you look at the percent of people who adopt these diets, keto diets, South Beach diets, whatever fad diets you want to do, the vast majority of them aren't following them greater than a year. They're not sustainable. So a diet that you should be implementing should be a diet that is sustainable, that you enjoy over a long period of time, or the positive effect of that diet is not going to take. So when people run to extremes, it's not practical.
But what is it about nutrition? My feeling has been this. It's like, I think because nutrition, it's so hard to study with epidemiologic studies. It's hard to verify really in humans. Yeah. So I feel like because of that gray area, it attracts people who have contrarian views, and maybe it attracts people who are not completely psychologically stable sometimes, like who really get into, some belief systems like the raw meat group, for example.
Well, think about this. It's glamorous. If I come to you and like, hey, I got a cool concept for a diet. It really works. It's crazy. What you do is you eat nothing but strawberries and peanut butter. Someone's going to be like, man, there's got to be some truth to that. Yeah. That sounds like they confuse extremism, and they confuse complicated with effectiveness when that's not the case. And, carnivore diet, vegetables are toxic for you. I mean, come on. And the worst part about it is,
yes, I'm glad you say that.
Physicians pushing some of this stuff.
Yes, that one physician. It's very interesting. Yeah, I wonder if he. Very interesting. Yeah, that point.
I do think he believes it. Like, I mean, think about it. We had doctors that said smoking cigarettes was good for you back in the day, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like, they do exist. In another 10, 15 years, they're gonna be like, oh, remember that guy who did that? Well, that was debunked, and you can't do that anymore. So.
What do you think of? Do you think of like when you think of foods and the value they provide? Do you think of them more from a building block potential, like essential vitamins and stuff like that? That's the traditional history of the nutrition world. Or do you think of them also as signaling molecules, like how they affect? All
right. So when I build someone's diet, I look at their nutrient value of the food they're consuming to a certain point. So say, for example, someone's losing body fat. Obviously, the amount of food they're going to be eating is going to be reduced. So clearly, they're not going to be eating only olive oil, chicken, and white rice. Nutrient value is very low. So white rice is going to be more replaced with potatoes, some fruit, some carbohydrates and vegetables. Fats are going to be a mix of olive oil, whole egg yolks, avocado, nuts, etc., to get a wider variety of micronutrients that they might become deficient in when they're so low calories. Now, on the opposite, their calories starting to go up and up and up, eventually comes to a point where those nutrient dense foods are generally higher in fiber, higher in prebiotics, so they're harder to digest. You can't eat a lot of them. So from that point forward, then you start focusing on easy to eat foods, rice products, cream of rice, white rice, rice pasta. And those would be the other fillers of carbohydrates and energy that you can fill into the diet to give them their caloric surplus, but still being able to dot your I's and cross your T's of the micronutrient dense foods.
What do you think of I'll ask you about two diets really quickly. The vertical diet, which a lot of people use in the bodybuilding world. Have you used, what is your opinion on it?
Yeah, my opinion is this. It's a great concept. Do I think people should be eating red meat all day long? I don't think so. I mean, is chicken a bad protein? I understand his concept with steak being a superior protein source, considering all that it offers. I get it. But you also have to understand that how do people cook steak on the grill? What do we know about grilled charred foods? They're 100% linked to increased risk of colon cancer. So do we want people who are generally overweight to be consuming 2 pounds of cooked charred meat on the grill? No. Could they cook it in a pan, braise it, do other forms that would be a better option? Of course. But in my opinion, I wouldn't be recommending eating that much red meat. I would still want a variety of foods: salmon, whole eggs, some chicken. But I don't believe that eating one piece of red meat a day is also going to increase your risk of mortality and morbidity either.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think that the amount of white rice in the diet so frequently throughout the day without extended periods without food would cause insulin resistance in a lot of people over time?
Well, a lot of research supports insulin resistance more comes from the presence of high saturated fat diet. So like when fat content becomes very high, more insulin resistance become present.
That's true. There are two camps on that.
Correct. I think what people need to really understand and monitor is you look at your diet, whatever method you're using, and monitor your insulin resistance, monitor your blood sugar, fasting blood sugar in the morning, and make sure it's not trending up over time. Checking maybe your A1C and keeping these things under wraps. And then if it starts to get out of control, look at your diet. If your diet's already, moderate in carbs, it's super high in fat, that you might want to drop some of those fat content and lower the calories and address it that way. Some things are just very individual, like I don't like to make broad recommendations, a direct recommendation. Someone's going to take it and be like, well, that's not what my diet's doing. Well, it's because,
yes, it's a very complex,
a little different, very complex.
What last one is, have you seen Doucette's cookbook, Greg Doucette's cookbook, and the kind of diet that he has? You don't know much about it? I think you'll have an interesting opinion on it if you check it out. Okay, so I want to ask you some questions about coaching also before we, maybe we can answer some. Bostin, we have like 90 amazing questions from the audience for you, by the way. So we have to get to them at some point. I don't know if you'll have time to answer some of this.
We can do whatever.
But I wanted to ask you a couple more things. How do you like you were talking about the HbA1c and fasting glucose levels. Have you ever tried the Dexcom with your bodybuilding clients?
I have not.
It's wonderful. I wore one for a year while I was still arm wrestling. Life-changing, really. If you ever get to try one on yourself, the new Dexcom is so easy to use too. I'd highly recommend it. Only costs like $700. You can buy it online, even though you need a prescription. You can find the pieces on Amazon. But do you guys watch like heart rates? I know you watch blood pressure very carefully. I've heard in your interviews.
Yeah, blood pressure and blood work. And you'd be amazed how many people are resistant to getting that done. It's amazing.
Really?
You have no idea. I've had clients ask for a refund because they said I was too health conscious. Because I said to the dude, I'm like, dude, your blood pressure is out of control. I go, your blood work is out of control. Your cholesterol is 325. He's like, I don't know if this is going to work out for me. You're a little too health conscious. I'm like, dude, you're 27 years old. You have 2 kids. You're going to be like dead in 10 years. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Wow. Just for the audience to understand, total cholesterol over 300 is you could classify as familial hypercholesterolemia, like a genetic disorder, and your insurance will cover a PCSK9 inhibitor for that. Like I can't get one because I can't get my cholesterol that high, even if I try to fake it. Yeah,
I've had people be like, "Oh, the blood work place is like 30-minute drive. It's so far."
But I tell you something, Chris. Bostin is almost as reluctant to get blood work. It takes a lot.
No, that's I've been getting blood work every 6 months for the last like 6-7 years.
Yeah, 6 months. But if in between you need some blood work, I'm not. I don't like the doctor.
Well, I've been getting my kidneys tested. My kidneys have been getting tested every month. So
how's that ALT? Did you check on it again? Bostin recently found that his ALT was a little bit high. We were wondering if it was because of the kidney thing or whatever.
Oh, the ALT, yeah.
90.
No, it was like 103.
103, yeah.
Are you still training, Bostin?
No, I've been off. I was off when I got the blood work done. I was off everything for 8 weeks, like no GH, no testosterone, like no drugs at all. And my testosterone was at 71, and my estrogen was crashed. So I said, I need to get back on some TRT. So I ended up taking a shot of testosterone cypionate, just 250 mg on Monday.
And after taking the shot, he had so much energy. Start texting me. He's like, "Hey, I'm planning guests for the show." He got such a good mood.
Because I took a shot of Prop. I did 50 mg Prop, 250 and Enthate.
I was like, "Bro, what happened?" He's like, "Oh, I just took a shot." Okay, a couple more things. So about blood tests, do you test any unusual biomarkers? Like for example, Bostin and I have been talking a lot about how creatinine can be misleading with the kidney markers. So I was researching other biomarkers that can be a good proxy for kidney health, and I came across obviously Cystatin C, but also symmetric dimethylarginine. SDMA is also a good proxy for kidney health. And Cystatin C, apparently I found out it gets affected particularly by insulin resistance, but it also gets affected by growth hormone use, whereas I don't think SDMA does. So you usually check Cystatin C as well?
Cystatin C is expensive test. Most doctors don't want to order it. So generally my progression is this. I have a rule. It's like, if my clients don't want to do this, they can go work with somebody else. I don't care. They do routine blood work, check their blood pressure, and they include it in the email. Blood work might be done every 12 weeks. And they just get basically a basic metabolic panel, including a CBC and lipids. And then I'll take a look. And then if there's something that's wrong, I usually say, hey, listen, take your blood work, tell what your doctor, what you're doing, and go get it checked out if it's severe, which really, I never had that issue. Remember one time my client just got over COVID and his CRP was like 53.
I've been seeing that right now. People got over COVID 2 weeks ago. Their CRP is still elevated.
Yeah. So he was panicked. He's like, dude, am I having a heart attack? My son's going up. Dude, I go, it's probably related to the COVID. I go talk to your doctor. The doctor's like, yep, see it all the time. Yeah. But usually, like a lot of my clients, like who have increased creatinine or BUN, I usually will request previous blood labs so you can look at markers from previously and look at trends over time, because EGFR, creatinine, BUN, you want to look at trends. 1, 2, there's a lot of things you need to prepare to get an accurate blood work if you are going to prepare. Like, don't train 3 days before you go. Don't eat red meat the day before you train. Before you get your blood labs, go fasting in the morning after 12 hours. Make sure you drink a liter of water before you go in to get an accurate reading. The studies have shown if you eat a steak and then an hour and a half later, you get your creatinine's going to be falsely elevated. Same thing with weight training. You train legs and you're going to go right to the lab and get your blood work done. You're going to check your creatinine, your AST, ALT, it's going to be elevated.
Particularly the AST.
Yeah. So sometimes like I might include creatine kinase to see if there's an issue, because, CK levels, you're usually high with all of us. Some people get stupid high, like 5,000 or more. And sometimes obviously doctors can be like, oh, you're going to get rhabdo.
Yeah.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, which is a very interesting phenomenon in that regard, where somebody might get rhabdo when they're at 6,000. Somebody might not even get it at all at they're at 10,000.
How often do bodybuilders get rhabdo? Does that, because I've heard of a lady under Starnes, I think, got it.
It's a perfect storm. So I had a client get rhabdo, and he was in the off season, and he was only training 4 days a week. It wasn't even on cycle. And it was kind of just like a perfect storm. I think he was doing hard labor as a job. I think he was a little on the dehydrated side, and it just things fell together. He didn't go full fledged into acute renal injury or anything like that. Had to go hospitalized. He's like, dude, I feel weird. I feel weak. My muscles feel tender, sore, and I'm kind of like pissing like cranberry juice color. Oh. And I'm like, oh, dude, go get your creatine kinase checked. And it was like 8,000. And the doctor's like, whoa, you need to like rest for a few days. Rested for a few days, got another blood work the week after, and this creatine kinase was all the way down to like, I think 350. It was like way down, and he was fine.
Just for the audience to know, rhabdo can happen when you have like muscle wasting, and it can really permanently damage your kidney if it happens. So it's just scary. Sometimes it happens. You don't realize like when it does happen. It's like CrossFit happens to a lot of CrossFit athletes, believe it or not, because you're doing so much muscle breakdown, all that myoglobin dumps into the blood, and your kidneys can't filter it, and then eventually you'll start to get acute renal failure. But also happens to people who get in accidents, like say that you got crushed and your legs got crushed, and all that trauma of the muscles and the bones, everything breaking, releases in the blood. You can also get acute renal failure right off the bat. I didn't know that. That's fascinating. Yeah. One last thing about the biomarkers. When you see an elevated C-reactive protein, what's your go-to? I mean, obviously there may be some someone's exposed to toxins or some drugs, but imagine—
How elevated?
Well, for me, I try to minimize mine to 0.3, but I think like bodybuilders like 1.0 or something like that is okay. But say it was 5.0. What would you do about that?
I would send them to the physician, because I'll be honest with you, I've only had 2 people ever who have an elevated CRP, and both are related to infection, sickness.
Really?
But I never have. I mean, at that point in time, I'm not a physician. I'm going to be like, listen, dude, I don't know. Because, sometimes at the end of the day, what the client's doing, you may not always know what they're doing, if they're doing recreational drugs, if they're doing whatever. So like if I know somebody's a partier, I'm like, hey man, like, I don't know what you're doing. You might want to cut it out, but I would go see the physician tomorrow and get this further evaluated, because it's not something you want to play around with. And then they can go do it that way. But I don't sit there and try to pretend to diagnose anything.
Yeah, for me, I have like because of the autoimmune condition, my CRP is always a little bit elevated. So I've been manipulating it with supplements and stuff like that. The most effective thing I ever found was EPA. as a single supplement. I have very few clients. They're not bodybuilders, but I have a client who had a CRP was slightly elevated. I can't remember the number, a few days ago. So we got him, he was taking 6 grams of EP. He moved from 6 grams to 9 grams, or total fish oil actually. He moved from 6 to 9, and it was enough to bring the CRP down. So even at those doses, it still has a significant difference from 6 to 9. It's really interesting.
I believe it.
Guys, Bostin, we never reviewed the Texas Pro or the Spain one. Do you want to discuss it briefly?
Yeah, ask Chris if he's down. I'm down.
Chris, are you down to discuss it briefly?
Sure.
So what I'll do is I'll share my screen with you guys. I have some questions I need you guys to explain to me because I don't really understand everything. So first, let's talk about the Open really quickly. Why is Iain Valliere here? Oh, it is Iain Valliere, yeah. So I'd like to see the comparisons so we can just comment really quick. Can you guys tell me, so I want to understand, why did Iain win? Because I see that this guy is much bigger, Kuklo, and he's much better condition.
So this is a hard one. Kuklo has a bigger structure, and he's just overall bigger person, and he definitely has better structure. Obviously, a better back. I think Ian's condition is slightly better. I'm not sure. A lot of people had Kuklo winning, but I personally had Phil winning this again. I mean, Phil's conditioning, his back, his lines. I mean, I don't know. What's your opinion, Chris?
I have Phil winning.
Yeah, okay.
Me too. I thought I'm an idiot because I don't understand bodybuilding.
Well, it's tough. Remember, bodybuilding is subjective, right? You have 5 bodybuilders. You have 5 people who are a fan of bodybuilding, and you go, "Hey, who do you think should have won in Olympia with these top 3 guys?" You're going to get different answers for different reasons because they might have a preference on a specific body part. Like this particular pose, I have Kuklo winning. I think Kuklo looks more balanced. I think he looks more polished. I don't have Phil winning this one.
Yeah, but one thing that people commented, they say Phil's waist is big, but his waist is actually thinner than both of them. It's just like, it just has the ab. I don't know what's going on here exactly. I think that the linea alba. By the way, Bostin is peeing. He does this on the show sometimes. Sorry about that, Chris.
The other thing that can occur too in pictures is the picture is snapped at the time that the person's not directly into the pose yet. You know, how many times have I seen pictures of myself and then I watch a video of myself and the video looks completely different than the picture. You know, we're speculating on pictures, like breaking down each shot and which person won each shot. You know, this one, I feel like it's between Phil and Kuklo,
Yeah,
I did see the video, by the way, of the whole prejudging, and I had Phil winning because he was so sharp. I mean, I'm a conditioning guy. I know Chris is a conditioning guy too. So the crispness and the dryness, I definitely had Phil Klahar winning.
Okay, I got
you know it is a lot of the guys. You ever notice too, like they judge the rear double bicep and the front double bicep. I feel like sometimes very strongly, more so than other poses, because it just kind of resembles the overall structure and shape, But
those are Ian's worst poses, though.
Yeah. I mean, I God, but the other thing is there's this guy in Classic who Milos says is natural, the winner of Classic, which is
fascinating. So yeah. So I heard this, right? And I guess he used to work with Dennis, and I guess he was natural a couple years ago, but he's not natural now. There's no way. He works with AJ Sims. He put on like
I don't know that.
That sums it up.
Yeah, he put on like 30 pounds of muscle or 20 pounds of muscle in like 1 year, Leo.
He has incredible physique though, for the Classic.
Oh, insane physique. His name is like Robert Timms.
Timms, yeah. On the other hand, I know nothing about bodybuilding. So for me, I've always been very confused by Logan Franklin. I'm not to be harsh, but because he talks himself up, so you can be harsh. But basically, like to me, it looks like a guy that shouldn't be in Classic. I know he built all his muscles to try to get wider and stuff, but he's, as you can see, this is a bad picture, but he's not naturally. He doesn't have when he pulls in his waist like here. It looks like he has a small waist, but he doesn't actually. He has a normal hip structure, and he doesn't have a particularly wide upper body. And why do you guys think he has all this?
His conditioning doesn't look that great either. I mean,
it looked good in the video. I mean, he has like a 2-minute posing routine or 3-minute posing routine that's like very artistic, But I don't when I see this, I don't think like, oh, this guy should be in classic. But people are saying he's supposed to win, or one day he's going to win, or something like that.
I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think classic is super subjective because you have so many different variations of your classic physique in the top 5. Do you know what I mean? It's like at some point, it's like, how much are you judging with muscularity and condition versus how much are you putting points on a classic shape?
Well, but if you're talking about muscle or shape, I wouldn't imagine that he would be in the running, because you've got, right?
The shape compared to Robert Timms.
Yeah, and it's completely different. Well, I feel sorry for him though that he didn't win. He tried very hard, clearly. Oh, I'm going back to classic. I wanted to show you guys the 212 also because I was so impressed with Ahmed. I'm sure you guys saw him, but there's an Arabic guy, so I always get impressed with the Arabs. I'm very proud of them.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
He's incredible, huh?
Look at that shape.
It's incredible.
He's got a more classic shape. Look at that. Look at that.
Right?
Look at those legs, small waist, huge lats.
Incredible. Where did he come from? Do you guys know his history?
No.
I don't. I didn't even hear about this guy till this year.
He's incredible, huh? I don't know who trains him. And then I think I wanted to go. So Guy retired.
Finally.
But out of nowhere, I didn't think he was going to retire.
He's old, man. He needs to retire.
He's 37 or 38.
No,
I think he's older than me.
He's in his 40s.
Are you sure? He's like 40. Well, you have Rolly's 47, I think.
I think Guy Cisternino is in his 40s. I don't think he's in his 30s.
Yeah, I think he is in his 40s. He's older than me. I'm 38. He's older than me. I think he is in his 40s.
Oh, I just realized. You see, he can't pull the pose because of his shoulder. You see that? He's bringing it in a bit. Oh, I just noticed that, poor guy. So, what did you guys think about his showing? What do you think happened to him?
I just think that like it comes to a point in bodybuilding where I think the body just doesn't. It's kind of, I hate to say it, it's going down the hill. You hit your peak and then you're starting to regress, where you've lost that. Like Phil Heath has lost, we saw Phil Heath peak and then we saw him start to regress. I think your body comes to a point, especially with age, where it's just the muscle bellies don't hold up. The body doesn't hold up the same way, doesn't respond the same way.
Interesting. About the Europa, I think that I don't know who this guy is, but
that's I know who that is. So yeah, I had Rolly winning this show actually. I looked at pictures, but pictures don't tell you everything.
Did you really?
I had Rolly winning this show.
Do you think he regained his size, or what's going on? How did he get so
I don't
bigger?
I don't think he was 100%, but I think he definitely improved.
You mean improved from his last showing?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a crazy side shot for the upper body, huh?
I don't know. Nathan looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, we should look at Nathan. He looks incredible. He gained a lot of size, I think, in his legs, right? Huge legs. Like he spreads them apart.
Look at that shape. That's an unbelievable pose.
The front shots are great for him.
He has a tiny waist, huh? Holy shit.
I think the only part that he's lacking is it looks like his hamstrings are a little shallow.
That's true.
Shallow from the side?
No, just like they're up and down. Like he does, how like Nick Walker when he hits his back double shot, like his legs are like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like freaking cement blocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I don't have pictures of this, but I want to ask you guys some questions. Do you think that Hassan Mustafa was overlooked? Do you remember? Did you see him there, Bostin?
He's not in shape. He's not in shape. But with this new rule about the supposedly they're gonna start.
How are they gonna do that? How are they gonna do that?
Can you guys tell me your opinion of that rule? What's going on?
It's fucking terrible because you don't have to kill yourself to get in shape. So what are they going to start rewarding people that are fat?
Well, listen. Well, put like this, and this is the worst part about that, right? So if you are, it's not going to stop people from doing dumb protocols, right? It's not.
Yeah.
So if they're like, oh, I don't need to be super shredded, so I'll just coast in and just take some extra diuretics or do this crazy protocol to try to dry out. It's not going to protect or stop anybody. Like, it's just not. Like, so some guy gets on stage, he's muscular, he's full, he's hard, and peeled to the bone. You're going to give him third over somebody who has smooth glutes, and how is that going to work?
How are you going to enforce it? Actually, yeah, exactly.
It's like what's the criteria? Like, how soft do you have to be? You know what I mean? Like,
But wait, Chris, what do you think about, I mean, I know nothing, and I suggested something stupid maybe in the podcast, which is I said, like, if there's a coach who's killed a couple of people, you could just ban him. But does that sound ridiculous? I mean, I feel like I don't think that individual competitors are doing crazy dehydration protocols on themselves. Someone's usually guiding them.
This is what I don't understand, and this I really just don't. As you guys know, when somebody does anything verbally in this political climate, they get cancel culture, right? Cancel culture comes out and grabs them, right? In the fitness industry, you get people who are causing clients congestive heart failure, renal failure, in the hospital, death, and then fucking crickets.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? I know.
Nobody says anything. And then not to mention coaches who are good coaches who are friends with bad coaches don't even say anything.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, what? It's like, yo, bro, your boy over there is like dropping 80 milligrams of Lasix on people. Yeah, he does crazy stuff, but he's all right. Is he all right? I don't know.
That's really true, actually. Yeah,
that's a means protocol. All that.
I was about to say, like, how people.
He loves that, and look what it did. His guy got like second call outs, and then Amin went on a podcast. Bo sent me the podcast that Amin did, and Amin was blaming the judges, saying he should have been in the first call out and all this shit. And I'm like, dude, he wasn't in shape.
Bostin, how did he find that genetic gift of a human being? Because that has nothing to do with Amin. That's because
his good friend Big Ron or whatever, Big Rod, was training that kid in the gym and hooked him up with Amin.
Because he has like a gift. If he can just do his job right, that guy is going to be amazing. And like, you know what we're talking about, Chris?
You know who Amin is, right? Yeah.
No, but you know the competitor who's like, he has like dreadlocks? Yeah, he's huge. Massive guy with a tiny waist.
So much potential. He needs to get rid of Amin, but yeah, Amin was on the podcast saying that the judges overlooked him and all this shit.
It's crazy. But back when you were saying, like, I've had so many clients come to me over the years from big name coaches being like, just got out of the hospital. You know, this happened. I've had clients I have one client now with congestive heart failure, suspected from probably some crazy shit that some other coach had him do. And some of these protocols that people are having people do who shouldn't be doing them. It's like, if you're running that much cycle, that much gear for your first show, and you're not even coming in shape, getting third call outs, what?
Yeah, it's insane. Like, it's insane.
What?
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem with taking on too many clients, Chris, is they can't customize their shit. So whether if it's like Dave Palumbo, whether it's their guy's first show or it's their 30th show, they all get the same cycle. You know what I mean? It's crazy. So even if a guy has like a first show, they're just loading them up with drugs because all their shit is just like a little template. You know what I mean? Like copy and paste.
Can't do it. I had 6 people compete last weekend, and I'm like, this is horrible. It was so stressful. That's just 6 people. That's it. It's like, I couldn't imagine, you know, an astronomical amount of people if you're really paying attention to them.
6 really in one day. Wow.
That's three different shows. Luckily, because I was traveling across country, we stayed in Nashville for the full day, so I could answer everybody's email on Friday and set them up for Saturday. But it was stressful. I asked my wife. My wife's like, "You were great this whole entire trip until Friday," but everything worked out. You know.
We had a gentleman named Mike Wheels on the show, Boston. He had, remember, he got
congestive heart failure.
Congestive heart failure after working with Milos, and Milos made a couple of videos saying like, "This has nothing to do with me." Because the problem is Mike was blaming it on insulin, but it's probably something else. But it has something to do with
probably blood pressure. Blood pressure. I have a couple clients now, and this he's an older gentleman, and he says, "Hey, Chris, you're the first coach that's ever asked me to check my labs or my blood pressure." I'm like, I'm the first.
Wow.
It's like, crazy. So okay, here, send me, PayPal me $1,000 a month. Okay. Here's your drug protocol. We're just gonna see what sticks to the wall. Hopefully you won't drop dead. The whole concept of you know, with Dolph Lundgren on a t-shirt, it says if he dies, he dies. That's like that should be sold in the fitness industry. Be like, be careful what coach you get. If he dies, he dies. You're gonna get one of those guys.
So you think there are other coaches that are almost like
there's a ton of them.
There's so many of them.
But a lot of them, most of them, I think, are nobodies. You haven't heard of them.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I mean, I have had.
I heard some protocols just from some guys at like the gyms in like Tampa and shit that nobody knows about that has like 800 or 1,000 followers on Instagram. that are pushing the same bullshit. The only problem is, it's like a tree effect. Shelby will train one person, and that person will give it to a bunch of other people, and it's like it goes down.
Dude, you're dead on. I had a client come for me who was hiring a professional who works for the top coach, who's regurgitating the same cycle, and he ended up in the hospital with liver issues. And I'm like, looking at the cycle, I'm like, I don't understand how you're taking 200 milligrams of orals a day at 12 weeks out.
Oh, wow.
Was that fucking AJ Sims?
Actually, no, a guy in California.
Oh, okay.
Bostin sent me a program once of somebody who will remain nameless, and it had Bostin was 100 or 200 Superdrol?
100 Superdrol every day.
100 milligrams of Superdrol orally, not injectable, a day, and the off season. It was off season, right?
The off season, yeah.
How would you even eat? How would you even eat?
Do you have two livers?
It was wasn't it 400 mgs a deca every other day? So 1,200 mgs a deca every a week.
It was an intense, very intense. Yeah.
My question for those people that actually will administer that, you must feel awful.
Oh, dude, I would feel awful on 5 to 10 mgs of Superdrol. That shit's terrible.
Yeah. Now, before we leave that show for a second, I just want to ask Bostin, because maybe Chris, you don't want to comment on this, a little political, but Bostin, what is this 21-year-old guy deciding the fates of bodybuilders for at this show? This grandson of the nepotistic Mannion family.
You're talking about Tyler Mannion. I think it's the craziest thing in the world to have a kid that's that young, that doesn't have that much experience in bodybuilding, that is judging the Olympia, that is judging the Arnold Classic, that is judging the biggest shows. I mean, I could see if you want to start this guy on the side at like smaller shows, get him whatever, because he's your grandson and stuff. But to have him judging these major shows and not having somebody with experience is mind-boggling to me. And he's trying to change the judging criteria too. And I don't know. I've heard nothing but bad things about him, about backstage, how he walks around like he's like the shit and like he runs stuff. It's just crazy to me.
The reason I comment on this is two reasons. First, this show was really closely called. Like Chris said, it's an opinionated. I mean, you could easily say that Phil should have won. And to be honest, I feel sorry for Phil. Like, it was 2 shows. He tried his best. He's an old guy. He was almost there. And then just choosing between Kuklo and Iain, like, honestly, I bet you if they chose Kuklo, nobody would have said Iain should have won.
Nobody would have said anything.
Not even complained. Nobody would have said he should have won. Yeah. It was clear Kuklo was bigger, and I mean, you could say Iain was tighter and some. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I just wondered, because I'm not a bodybuilder, but if I was, and I was spending my blood, sweat, and tears to get on stage, right? And I get on stage and I see a guy who was never bodybuilded before, who was in his 20s, and he's the head judge and deciding my fate, I'd be really upset. But instead, they're going and kissing his ass and asking him questions after. And I want to bring this up on the podcast so people can talk. People don't know about it.
That's how it is. That's how it is in bodybuilding.
Are most of the judges not bodybuilders?
No, but Boston, like back what we were talking about a while ago, it's like, it's not about, like, nobody calls anybody out. It's everybody's trying to make it. Everybody's trying to get that validity from everybody else and that approval. So they're afraid to step on toes. And then,
that's the thing. There's so many coaches and shit that message me the same shit, but they'll never come out and talk about it. Like there's like top level coaches that hate that Tyler kid. They're like, this kid should no longer judge. But they would never talk about it because they're afraid that, they're not going to be liked by the committee and all that shit.
We actually have go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, head judges in general, besides Steve Weinberger, I think Steve Weinberger has the most fair, consistent judging across the board. Yeah. I remember pulling him aside one time, like, oh my God, don't ever stop being a head judge, because I always have my clients do his shows because they're fairly judged, in my opinion. But I mean, I've had a head judge say to one of my figure girls a couple years ago, she hired the head judge to help her pose. And first thing they say to my client when they walk in and goes, oh, you're doing bikini, right? And she's like, no, I'm doing figure. She's like, ooh, I would probably maybe do bikini. Calls me upset, crying. And I'm like, no, stop. Just don't worry about it. Forget what you said, blah, blah, blah. And long story short, that figure competitor has already won like a couple overall figure shows. Wow. 2 weeks later, she wins the figure show with that head judge at the table.
What the hell?
It's like, you can't make this up. Are you serious?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
No consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have actually a lot of people watch the show who are like well-known people in the industry that message us but won't come on the show because of the
yeah, exactly. Like
they agree with us but they can't come because of the political.
You'd be surprised how many people actually agree with this stuff, but they just won't go public because they don't want their clients to be marked down and all. They're just paranoid.
Let's do a couple of questions before we leave off because it's already been an hour. But I want to ask, one question was interesting. I think that Chris may have some opinions on this. Bartos said, opinion on the GH15 Bible. I don't know if you ever heard of GH15, Chris. Were you around in that era? Oh, you don't know about GH15? Because I heard you mention in some interviews, you're like, I don't know why some people are taking a gram of test a tren a week and stuff like that. A lot of that started from this guy called GH15. But anyway, he was asking you, Boston, what do you think of the GH15 Bible? I exposed this guy on my channel.
I've never read it. I've never read those cycles ever.
No way. They seem so.
I've never even been on that forum.
Oh my God, I gotta send you it's pretty interesting. It's like he pretended to be a pro and said these are what all the real pros are using. And he was on Get Big in around 2006, 7, 8. Then he made his own website. And his thing was like, real pros are taking 300 milligrams of tren a day. They take a gram of EQ, at least 15 units of growth hormone. That's why it's called GH15. That's the magic number. He said 15, but some use 30. And sipping pineapple juice all day. He popularized a lot of that. Like, to be honest with you, one of the main reasons I ever experimented with high doses, other than my powerlifter friend, was because of GH15. I didn't know if it was true or not. So I had to try it, and it was not true. But anyway,
it was not true.
it turned out that it seems that Naso Sambati did start the GH15 thing. From what I can tell, we did a lot of research. It seems that he may have started it, but his friends in his home country continued it. And there was more than one guy, and they continued after he left. That's the story behind it for the audience to know. Second question we got is, Nick R. asked, what are your predictions for the top 3 at the Arnold?
Ooh, that's a good one. Shit. Oh. I don't know everyone doing it, man. Fuck.
Oh my gosh. That's going to be a tough one. Who knows at this point? I mean,
do you have, this is a good question. Do you have Nick Walker in the top 3 or no?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yes. I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
I think so also, actually.
But do you have him in the top 5 at the Olympia?
No.
Okay, yeah. All right. I made a bunch of bets on that, Chris. I got like 6 bets going on that he won't be top 5 at the Olympia.
Boston is taking bets about the top 5 thing. If Nick Walker wins, it's going to be a horrible day.
Is Roden doing Olympia?
No, he's not. No. There's no way.
So it's Bonac, but then it becomes unclear afterwards, right?
Kai Green is supposedly doing it.
No way.
Supposedly he is.
No way.
What did you guys think about Redcon pulling out of the Arnold?
I thought that was a brave move. I like that.
I actually sent Aaron a message. I said, "This is like, I respect you after this. This is really impressive."
Because it's great.
Because it's easy. I mean, it can't be a good business decision, I imagine. Just maybe it is, maybe because of it, but it's certainly standing up for your morals, you know?
Yeah, I like that.
Certainly.
Yeah, I like when people stand up for what they believe in and not sell out for money. You know what I mean? Exactly. I like that. That's big on me. You know, one of my friends, he got asked to sport a watch, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to pay you money. You're going to sport this watch. You post about it." And he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, where's the watch made?" And he's like, "Oh, the watch is made in China." He's like, "Oh, I can't help you." He's like, "Dude, I'm going to pay you a couple grand just to wear a watch." He's like, when it's made in USA or Canada, then I'll wear it.
Yeah, see, that's awesome.
That's how I am. Well, that's the thing. It's okay. It's easy for everyone to be moral when you're not losing anything. You can really learn someone's code when you see that they may be losing something, taking the stand. You know what I mean?
Correct.
That's really impressive. Okay, Chris, we had a couple of questions specifically for you. IKC589 said, for Chris Tuttle, what, if anything, is the best solution to a loss of appetite on orals, even when the liver is healthy and enzymes are perfect? Do you see that happen? People have low ALT, AST, and they lose hunger?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, outside of making small manipulations in nutrition, as in choosing foods that are easier to eat, cream of rice, adding a little salt, adding a little fruit, maybe even low sugar jelly, something that's more palatable when you have a lower appetite to be able to get the food down. There's a lot of steps you can take with nutrition to make it more palatable, but you're going to have to spend more effort making your food and making it what you like, with better aromas, better flavors to taste it. The other thing is, in my opinion, I don't recommend people use orals in the off season because of that very reason. There's very few people that are going to be using orals in the off season and still be able to eat a lot of food. Most people can't, especially as you get older. But that's really my suggestion. Or you change the oral or lower the dose, or you take breaks. I've seen people do 4 weeks on, 4 weeks off, or do 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, do shorter bouts. But I mean, general orals are just orals are terrible for you. And I feel that they should be limited to preparation only.
I've never actually, I don't think that someone's appetite could be inhibited from taking an oral unless there was some liver toxicity. I would imagine that even if
I agree.
Right?
I totally agree.
Yeah. Another question we got from, go ahead.
The other thing is like a regular panel doesn't always show the full picture of how the liver's doing. A regular panel doesn't have GGT on there. It just has ALT, AST. It doesn't do the full liver panel. Exactly. So you really don't know. Plus, sometimes orals can give you reflux, can mess up the stomach acidity in your stomach, and that could interfere with your appetites. And that
the heartburn. The heartburn.
Yeah. You don't want to eat a bunch of food when you're burping up stomach acid.
Yeah, that's true. That's a separate issue. That's true. Jordan asked, he said, is there any way to increase metabolic rate without any thyroid drugs to allow for more food to be eaten, other than obviously gaining muscle? Anything from drugs to diet, etc. I was curious what you were thinking about in terms of diet. Obviously, anything that increases your sympathetic nervous drive will speed up your metabolism, but that might be unhealthy. Do you subscribe to the view that the metabolism raises if you eat more frequently?
Well, of course, when you eat, you get a metabolic
effect from the food.
So, right, thermal effect.
Processing.
But say if you take 1,000 calories or take 2,000 calories and you divide it into 2 meals versus 4 meals, over a 24-hour period of time, you're still in the same net loss, right, of thermal effect of food. It doesn't mean, it's not like you get extra a boost if you divide it up. You don't. You just ease the burden on the digestive tract. There's really no way you're going to really boost your metabolism, so to speak, other than making sure that when you're trying to lose body fat, you diet for longer, you don't go too low in calories, and you make sure you might want to intermittently have maintenance calorie feeds. So say if you're dieting and you're 15 pounds off and you're starting to feel fatigue, you start to get tired, weight loss is stopping, then you might want to start by adding 300 to 400 calories a day back of carbohydrates for a few days to see how your body responds. Fatigue will start to drop. You'll start to feel better. Cortisol will drop. You might lose a little water. You might appear bigger, fuller. But most of the time, the refeeds, they honestly work by reducing fatigue. If you reduce fatigue, you move more. If you move more, you're expending more calories. If you're exhausted, you're not going to be moving. You're not going to be fidgeting. You're not going to be moving about. Therefore, you burn less calories. There's actually current research that supports that cheat meals and refeeds, although in bodybuilding, we see anecdotal evidence of weight loss following those, that there is no real measurable, statistically significant boost in metabolism from them. But they do see an increase in calorie expenditure when somebody gets a refeed, because they're like, I feel great. I got energy. I'm going to go train. And then the next day they're in the gym, they train really hard, and all of a sudden they're in a net loss of 1,000 calories.
I never thought about that. That's fascinating. Yeah. Really eye-opening.
Yeah. Well, that's why I give my clients, occasional cheat meals and high days is I know they'll utilize it in the gym the next day. So yeah, that's a good point. But Chris, I was going to ask you, if you had a client that's going to get ready for a show, right? And he's like, hey man, my schedule is fucking crazy, right? And he's like, I can only do 4 meals. You're saying you will prep them, no problem, with 3 or 4 meals. You'll just add the appropriate calories to each meal. You don't care if they're eating every 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah, I've done that before, but this is what always happens. They say that at 12 weeks out, and then 5 weeks out comes. They're like, Chris, I'll totally do the 5 meals. We can divide up in 5 meals because I'm starving. Because then they'll make it work, because now that one meal is not taking them 10 minutes to eat, taking them 2 minutes to eat. So now they're going to be able to get it in. But that has happened. But I will prep them. I just tell them flat out, okay, you want to do it this way. That's not the ideal. I've also prepped people on no cardio, but they have to rely on step count. I'm like, you're going to be doing 20,000 steps a day. So at some point, like, you might as well do a little cardio to expend extra calories more intensely for 20 minutes.
People will hire you, and you're like, my only thing is I don't want to do cardio.
No. They might say, I had a guy do security job, right? And he's like, man, he goes, sometimes I'm over for 16 hours and I get held overnight and I miss cardio. I'm like, well, then, we're going to have to really his cardio was only like 20 minutes, 4 days a week. And the rest was just done by steps. So like we ended prep with like almost 17,000 steps a day, because at security job, he can walk around.
Yeah, that's true.
You're walking around, you're expending calories. Now, if you walk around an extra hour, if you walk around extra every hour at work, you're going to be expending close to 1,800 calories extra just walking around.
Yeah.
You know, and he actually didn't have much fatigue either.
I would love to see this happen, though. I would love to see somebody do an experiment and prep on 3 meals a day with the same calories, right? Versus 6 meals a day, same calories, same food, same exact calories, same exact diet, foods, and everything. The only difference is you're having 3 meals versus 6. I would like to see if there'd be a different result in the physique.
I think there would be a different result. And I think actually the main result would come from how, obviously when you're low calories and you're a caloric deficit and you're only eating 3 meals a day, you're going to have huge slumps of energy. You're going to get energy drop. You're not going to have, you're just going to feel awful. And the person's probably going to end up binging, because that gap between meals that long in a caloric deficit, it's just psychologically, it's going to tax them out and they're not going to make it.
And I think, like, let's say instead of doing 8 ounces of protein 6 times a day, you're doing 16 ounces 3 times a day. I don't know, man. I think your digestive, it's not going to process as well. I don't know. I just feel like somebody's not going to look as good, you know?
I would agree in that. I could see that happening. Obviously, I can't sit here and tell you it's 100%, but I've never done that with 3 meals. I tell people, you want to do 4 meals, it always changes. It always changes.
Yeah. You know how I think of this? Because I think from a signaling perspective as opposed to nutrients and stuff like that and the processing energy. So if we have periods of time with nutrient deprivation, there's more likelihood that IGF-1 and mTOR and those big growth pathways may potentially be turned off. Like if it's 3 meals a day, I imagine you're having at least 10 hours without eating, right? Whereas if you're splitting it up, you're constantly getting this signal. If you're eating, leucine and protein, you're getting this signal to keep, and the IGF-1 and the mTOR may conserve some muscle, and I imagine, this is just my thought.
Well, three meals would be like every 5 to 6 hours.
Yeah, but then, maybe even then, I don't know.
And
maybe if you eat a lot of protein,
and then a very long fast,
might not matter, actually.
You need that regular intervals of protein dosing for that maximizing that protein synthesis. You need it.
Yeah, exactly.
I still believe that 4 meals a day is the absolute minimum. Even my general weight loss clients, I explain to them that 4 meals a day is going to be the most sustainable for energy and for appetite. It may not be sustainable in your tight schedule, but you got to make it work, because people do start doing 3 meals a day and a snack, and then it turns into 2 meals a day and a snack. And then they're binging at the end of the night.
Well, if I have somebody that has
if
I have somebody with a busy schedule like that, I'm going to just do more shakes. I'll do like 3 whole meals, 2 shakes, or 3 and 3,
Yeah.
Chris, can you explain something to me? Sorry, I'm taking too long. With 2 last questions. Can you explain one thing to me? I've noticed when I was speaking to Chad Nichols that he had his clients often use 2 hours of cardio in the off season, or 1 hour of cardio in the off season, but they have higher calories. And initially, I didn't really understand it. I was thinking, why wouldn't you lower the calories so this guy doesn't have to stand on the treadmill or, do all that time?
Okay.
Then I thought about it. Tell me if I'm right. My thought process is this. Again, the signaling molecules. So the more protein, the more food you can have, the more insulin signaling, all of that you have, the more potential growth pathways you have. But you don't want to obviously get fat. So to raise the amount that you can eat, you increase your expenditure of, by using the treadmill or whatever. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a couple factors here. Obviously, intensity levels. You got one intensity level, say walking, light jog, full out sprint, all out effort. So obviously your systems of energy are changing. Fat is being burned the most at the lower intensity. Fat becomes less burned as you get higher intensity, more carbohydrates get burnt up, right? Now, the other thing mainly is for off season, one, you're keeping appetite up, you're keeping things moving, and walking and moving about has been shown to promote digestion and increase insulin sensitivity. That's true. So from a growth standpoint, it's like you're controlling body fat, you're maintaining healthy digestion, you're maintaining insulin sensitivity. And plus, I tell people too, people who have sedentary jobs and try to eat a lot of food, they just get fat. It just doesn't work out well. Someone who's got a business job or sales job, they're moving around and they're eating a ton of bulk, they usually have a better time because they're moving about, they're moving around, blood's flowing, digestion's better, they're not getting constipated, appetite's better, they feel better. And that's that standpoint. But what you did make a point is there's a lot of people that do absurd amount of cardio and they do a higher amount of calories during preparation to lose body fat. And some people go, I don't want to do cardio. I'd rather just cut more calories. Well, as you know, there's this process called metabolic adaptation. It's real. It does happen. Your body tries to counter what you're doing by a caloric deficit over a long period of time. It has all to do with leptin and ghrelin, right? So you go low calories for extended period of time. Eventually, leptin, I call it your thermostat. Think of it as a dimmer switch. So you're eating tons of calories, your dimmer switch is bright. Leptin's really high, ghrelin's low. You don't want to eat anymore. It's full off season. You start to drop those calories down for a period of time. That dimmer switch starts to decrease, starts to go down. Your body's willingness and easiness to burn fat decreases. Appetite starts to increase. And eventually people get to that point where leptin's bottomed out. Ghrelin's all the way up. They're starving and they could barely burn fat on low calories and a bunch of cardio a day, which is the spot you never want to get to. So if you're eating calories, you're going in and leptin's kind of in the middle of that dimmer switch because you still have kind of adequate calories, but you're expending them. In theory, you can keep burning fat and never have to get too low. 2 clients I dieted this year who were incredibly out of shape in the off season. One of them won USA's. We never got below like 250 carbs a day, and we never went above 15 minutes of cardio a day at all. And we did that, just a longer process, but kept the food in. We're focused on step counts, focused on moving, and kind of having that balancing act.
You trained the guy who won USA?
That guy was peeled. Yeah, the Jordan guy.
Yeah, he was in excellent condition. Congratulations. Wow.
Yeah.
That's your work, huh?
And the best part about it, a quarter of a diazide once.
Really? Incredible. And that guy seems to have a great work ethic as well, huh?
Oh, he's silly good work ethic.
Wow, you guys are a great team. I mean, he doesn't have much, you wouldn't think he had much genetic potential, but he came there, excellent condition, great physique, really impressive. You remember in Boston?
You remember the only knock on I had him were his arms.
Yeah, his arms, yeah.
But that was great condition.
I knew he was going to be good, but I didn't want to tell him. I was like, man, we're just right there. We just got a little bit farther. He's like, how do you think I'll do? I'm like, I don't know. I go, let's just roll in and see what we got. I just want to make sure, kind of keep him humble, you want people to build those unrealistic expectations where those coaches are like, dude, you're going to kill it. You're going to win.
You never know who's going to show up. You never know who's going to show up either. You don't want to tell your clients that.
No, I'd rather them always fight like they think the enemy is going to beat them. Do you know what I mean?
I know a few coaches that always tell their clients, oh, you're going to fucking win. Like, you're going to kill this. Like, you're going pro this year. Like, and then they set them up and then they don't. It's like, oh, man.
It's a mess.
Well, Chris, congratulations, first of all, on his placing. That was wonderful. But thank you so much for coming on the show. It was a great pleasure to talk to you, really.
Yeah, no problem.
Bostin, you have any last things you want to say?
No, this is going to be a really good podcast. So much really good information on this.
I want to let the audience know I'm going to be interviewing Jody, who missed the podcast yesterday, who has heart conditions of some kind. We don't know exactly yet.
And one last thing, and that's the other reason why, the last thing I want to say with the thing that Chris said about keeping the calories higher and slowly doing things. I'm a firm believer in that too, because once, like Shelby Starnes, how chick on the podcast said he had her start off at 700 calories 12 weeks out. Like, where do you go from there? So the problem is he's going to kill these girls with T3 and Clen to try to get them down. Their body's fighting them the whole time. So either one or two things happen. Yeah, they'll come in shape, super unhealthy because they're taking all these drugs and all these things, or two, that they're going to have health issues and they won't even make it to the show. And we got all those messages of chicks that didn't even make it to the show on that protocol.
Tons.
Well, the one last thing to add to that too, it's like, I hate this. And this is, I try to explain to people is you have 10 people, you give 10 people you recommend 10 people astronomical amount of drugs, tons of cardio, low calories, crazy calories. You're going to get probably 40% of them are going to look nasty.
I agree.
You're going to get a few percent of them that are okay. And you're going to get a few percent that look terrible and a few percent that don't make it. It's like, it shouldn't be that way.
I agree. And then they only post the people that look good, right?
Yeah.
Maybe if you have 400 clients, you get quite a few that are very good when doing that. It's like throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks.
What about integrity? What about just doing the right thing? Hey, it's not a good idea. And speaking of that, if somebody has predisposed health issues, it's, whoa, we're backing out of the show. We got to get this checked out. We're going to revisit this at another time. It's not worth it. Instead of having a coach be like, having the client be like, no, I want to push it. And the coach be like, okay, no problem. No, you're a professional. You're supposed to have the best expertise and direct them the best way possible. Because at the end of the day, who wants to die for a plastic trophy? Come on.
And really, we could say that, you know, all human beings, we all within us, to be happy in life, you have to serve the community. You can't just serve yourself. If you serve yourself, you'll be miserable. You have to care about others. And that's integrity is what we're talking about there. That's a great point to leave it on. Well, Chris, a lot of what you say resonates with me very much so. It's a great pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
All right, guys, I'll talk to you later.
Boston. Thank you.
See you guys, man. Thank you.
Bye-bye.